You're standing in Dodge City, Kansas, 1878, the most famous Wild West town in America. You're expecting chaos, gunfights, tumbleweeds, a showdown at high noon, cowboys with revolvers on both hips, and saloons exploding into violence. Instead, you're watching a deputy arrest a cowboy for carrying a gun. The cowboy protests. The deputy doesn't care. He makes him check his revolver at the marshal's office like it's a coat at a restaurant. There's a sign on the building: carrying firearms strictly prohibited. Welcome to the real Wild West. Where gun control was strict, most cowboys were broke seasonal workers, and the famous gunfight at high noon barely existed. Everything you think you know is wrong. Let's fix that. Let's start with the biggest lie of all. Everyone was armed. Gunfights were constant. Reality? Most Western towns had strict gun laws. Tombstone, Arizona, home of the OK Corral, required visitors to surrender their firearms when entering town. The Earps weren't outlaws. They were law enforcement enforcing a gun ordinance. That legendary shootout? 30 seconds. 3 men dead. It made national news because gunfights like that were rare. Dodge City's murder rate during its wildest decade, 1870 to 1880, averaged 1.5 homicides per year. Total. Modern American cities have higher murder rates than the so-called Wild West ever did. You were statistically safer in Dodge City than in many places today. And those iconic quick-draw duels, 2 men facing off at high noon while the town watches, almost never happened. Real gunfights were drunken arguments, at night, at close range, with terrible aim. Most victims never saw it coming. Wild Bill Hickok, the legendary gunslinger, shot in the back while playing cards. The quick-draw duel is pure Hollywood fantasy. Real gunslingers didn't want fair fights. They wanted to win, by surprise, from behind, preferably when the other guy was unarmed. Not exactly the noble frontier justice the movies promised. Here's what you think a cowboy was: a rugged individualist, lone rider, free spirit, answering to no one. Here's what a cowboy actually was: a low-wage seasonal laborer doing one of the worst jobs in America. The job? Drive 2,000 cattle from Texas to Kansas, 1,000 miles, 3 to 4 months, 18-hour days in the saddle. The pay? $30 a month, about $1 a day. Factory workers in New York were making 2 to 3 times that, while sleeping in beds and not being trampled by cows. Your day starts before dawn. Saddle up. Find cattle that wandered off overnight. Push them north all day in brutal heat, choking dust, pouring rain, or freezing wind, while eating beans and hardtack because that's what the trail boss paid for. The cattle are panicky and stupid. If something spooks them, they stampede. When that happens, you ride into the dark, hoping you don't get crushed under 1,000 hooves. At night, you sleep on the ground. No tent, no mattress. Your saddle is your pillow. For months. Then you reach Kansas. You get paid, maybe $90 to $120. You haven't seen a town in weeks. You get drunk, gamble, visit a brothel, wake up broke, hungover, and possibly diseased. Now you're unemployed until next year. This isn't freedom. It's seasonal poverty with better branding. And the cowboy image? Not even originally American. About 25% of cowboys were black, many of them formerly enslaved men moving west after the Civil War. Another 15% were Mexican vaqueros, the people who actually invented cowboy culture. The hat, the boots, the rope techniques, the riding style, all borrowed, credit not given. And the whole cowboy era? It barely lasted 20 years, roughly 1865 to 1885. Railroads expanded. Barbed wire went up. Long cattle drives disappeared. By 1890, being a cowboy wasn't even a real job anymore. Hollywood shows the Wild West as non-stop chaos, dusty streets, constant drama, violence around every corner. Reality? Western towns were boring, painfully boring. A normal day in Dodge City. 6 a.m. Wake up. It's quiet. The town has maybe 1,000 people. 7 a.m. Go to work. You're a shopkeeper, blacksmith, seamstress. Normal job. Boring job. Noon. Lunch at home or a boarding house. Nothing happens. 6 p.m. Dinner. Still nothing happens. 8 p.m. Maybe go to a saloon. Maybe play cards. Maybe drink watered-down whiskey because saloon owners diluted it to save money. 10 p.m. Go home. The day is over. Nothing happened. Again. And the saloons? They weren't fun. Hollywood saloons have brawls, piano music, dancing girls, and high-stakes poker. Real saloons were depressing. Sad men drinking alone, sticky floors, bad smells, a piano with 3 working keys, or a guy with an accordion who knew exactly 3 songs. The dancing girls were usually women you paid to talk to you because you were lonely. That's it. That's the excitement. What doesn't get shown is how diverse the West actually was. Chinese immigrants building railroads and running laundries. Black cowboys and buffalo soldiers, Mexican communities who lived there before the U.S. arrived, European immigrants, Germans, Irish, Italians. It was multicultural. It was also brutally unequal. Racism was intense. Chinese immigrants faced violent discrimination. Black cowboys were barred from white businesses. Mexican land was systematically stolen. Diverse didn't mean fair. And despite the myths, law and order mostly worked. Most towns had marshals or sheriffs. Crime stayed low because everyone knew everyone. Hard to rob someone who knows your name. Punishment was fast and unpleasant. Gun control actually existed. And most people were too busy working to cause trouble. The lawless frontier is mostly fiction. People didn't want chaos. Chaos is bad for business. Okay, so if gunfights were rare and towns were boring, what actually killed people in the Wild West? Disease. This was the real killer. Cholera, typhoid, dysentery, tuberculosis. Medicine was primitive. Doctors were scarce. Clean water was a luxury. You got sick, you probably died. That was it. Bullets didn't get you. Bacteria did. Then there were accidents. Horses threw riders. Wagons overturned. Tools failed. Cowboys got trampled. Miners were crushed underground. The West was dangerous the same way any pre-industrial world was dangerous. Everything could kill you, and OSHA didn't exist yet. Now, Native American conflicts. This is where Hollywood gets it halfway right and completely wrong at the same time. The US government was stealing land, breaking treaties, forcing tribes onto reservations. Native Americans fought back. This wasn't savages attacking settlers. It was genocide. A campaign of ethnic cleansing dressed up as frontier justice. The violence was real. The framing was a lie. And then there was nature. Tornadoes, blizzards, droughts, locust swarms, summers hot enough to kill you, winters cold enough to freeze you in your sleep. Settlers died of heat stroke, froze to death, starved when crops failed. The land didn't care who you were. But the quiet killer, the one nobody romanticizes, was loneliness. Homesteaders lived miles from neighbors, weeks from towns, months from family. Isolation broke people. Depression went untreated. Suicide rates were high. People just snapped. The West wasn't wild because of gunfighters. It was wild because it was lonely, brutal, and completely indifferent to whether you survived. So no, this wasn't a romantic adventure. Not constant excitement. Not honorable duels and rugged freedom. It was a 20-year burst of expansion, exploitation, and cultural collision that later got turned into a myth. Why do we remember it so wrong? Because it was fake almost immediately. Buffalo Bill's Wild West show started in 1883, while the West was still happening. He hired real cowboys and Native Americans to perform exaggerated versions of frontier life for Eastern audiences. Dime novels turned criminals into legends. Wyatt Earp spent his retirement helping Hollywood write his own myth. By the 1950s, Westerns dominated TV. An entire generation learned fiction instead of history. The real Wild West was desperate people chasing opportunity, immigrants trying to survive, freed slaves escaping one kind of oppression and finding another, Native Americans fighting to exist, dreamers, failures, criminals, and workers doing brutal jobs and dying young. Messy, diverse, tragic, occasionally heroic, mostly just hard. That's not romantic. That's human. But it doesn't sell movie tickets. So we got cowboys who never existed, gunfights that almost never happened, and a Wild West that was actually pretty tame. The truth is messier than the myth. It usually is. And now you know. If you time traveled to Dodge City in 1878, you'd need to check your gun at the sheriff's office. It's the law. If this changed how you see history, hit like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.